This is my life, always doing something. Um, I want to explain something that was very confusing to me for a long time. Oopsie. And I wish somebody explained it to me when I started, and there's a lot of videos that go into it. So this is my new setup. I I do have some more bucephalandra, which I'm gonna put a little bit more, and some Monte Carlo in between the rocks. In the back I planted a microsword and this little grassy plant, which I never can remember its name, but it's one of my favorite plants. That is looking really beautiful. But in the process I had a new aqua soil, and then I did my measurements, and my pH is really low and my KH is like 0. So I thought that's a good opportunity to kind of explain a few things that are very important for plants. I mean, I'm not so much like fish focused person, so I'm just gonna try and explain water chemistry, but this is with disregard to what fish needs. Like, different fish species need different parameters. Now, as far as the plants go, we in Iowa have pretty hard water, so there are several measures of your water. There is this little TDS meter that's total dissolved solids that measures like everything in your water. It has like a little electrical current. You put it in the water and it tells you how many parts per million you have in basically everything. So this one says 173. So that's good. That's good for the planted aquarium. So for the planted aquarium, it would be ideal if your total dissolved solids are below 200. That means the water is not polluted. It doesn't have too much of anything. I can tell you our TDS from tap is around 160. So then you add your ferts and whatever is dissolved, like organic waste from fish waste, whatever is dissolved in the water contributes to that total dissolved solids. The measure on its own, is not all that important, but it is a starting point where you can kind of figure out what else you need to check. So that's what total dissolved solids is. You can get one of these meters on Amazon for like 10-15 bucks. It's helpful, but I wouldn't base my maintenance and what I'm doing with my aquariums on TDS alone. If a TDS is really high, it's a sign that you probably should check what's going on with your aquarium. Okay, so pH is, as you know, acidic or alkaline. 7 is neutral. Anything under 7 is acidic. Anything over 7 is alkaline. So in Iowa, water is pretty neutral, a little bit over 7 from tap. So plants do like to have a pretty low pH. They really like it between 6 and 7. They can go even lower, but maybe some of your fish can't. So when you add aqua soil, that actually lowers your pH. The soil has a lot of like wood particles and stuff, which lower that, make your water more acid. So with the new aqua soil, it's important to perform water changes, not only because of ammonia level can be pretty high, but also because it can kind of like lower your pH to the point when it starts crashing and killing your fish. I don't have any fish in this one. I've removed the fish. There was shrimp. Some shrimp I've killed by adding aqua soil. I tried to catch as many as I can, but I know some babies got buried alive. I'm sad, but what can you do? It's a mistake. I should have picked each one of them, and I thought they would be fine swimming around as I added a little bit of aqua soil, because I used the old aqua soil and then added new aqua soil. So every day in fish keeping you learn something. So pH for planted aquarium should be between 6 and 7. Total dissolved solids should be below 200. So between 150 and 200 is probably good. Then I took a measure of this new setup, and because it is all new water in this aquarium, but it is established filter and there is established substrate underneath. And I did a measure and my pH is like down to 6, like in no time. And the CO2 also reduces pH, so you have to be careful if you're doing aqua soil and CO2, and if you're using filtered water. If you do all those things at once, you could crash your pH. So pH is like a measure of free ions in the water, free hydrogen ions in the water. So then there are some other measurements to worry about. GH is general hardness, which is the stuff that causes like that water deposit on the top of your tank. So general hardness is measures a bunch of things, but the major contributors are calcium and magnesium. But they're minerals and they're needed in the water to some extent, but you don't need a whole lot of general hardness, and we have in Iowa enough, so you should never have to worry about general hardness for calcium and magnesium in your water if you live in Iowa. KH, or carbonate measure of carbonates or bicarbonates in the water, is another contributor to the hard water, but it is a compound that actually absorbs those free floating hydrogen ions, which can crash your pH. So KH is really important to have some of it. Like my KH is 0 in this aquarium, so that means I set it up, but with CO2 running and aqua soil, my pH will keep going down, and in order to prevent that, you need to have some KH. So a quick water change will probably solve that. I'm going to do that. You do have kind of on a lower end KH in Iowa, in the municipal water, like where I live in Urbandale. But KH maintenance is important, and if you don't have enough KH in your water, you may have to add an alkaline buffer. That's what it's called, an alkaline buffer. So that basically you have some KH, which prevents your pH from crashing. Okay, so now let's take a measure of this. So I'm just going to use a strip, a test strip, to see what's going on here. This test kit measures GH and KH, that's why I like it. You get a lot of them for like $10. Again, Amazon. Amazon's best friend of a fish keeper, I'll tell you. So I'm going to dip it. Let's see. I'm going to dip it to see what's going on. It's a new setup. You have to watch your new setup closely. Okay, so I have a wet stick. So now let's compare with this little chart. Okay, so based on this little chart, my nitrat is 0, which it should be. Again, it was an established tank, so it has an established filter with a lot of biomedia. Half of the substrate is existing, so there is no reason nitrate should climb at all. It's not like a brand new filter. Nitrate, I can never pronounce these things. Again, shows 0. Well, there is no fish. I'm sure there will be some ammonia later today. Chlorine 0. That, if you use the chlorinator, that should never be an issue. Okay, so here is what interests me. Total hardness. It's purple. It's pretty hard. So, as time goes on and sometimes I use Rhody water for top-offs, or I cut my water changes with Rhody, that total hardness, that's pretty high. There is a lot of minerals in the water, 150. I'm still okay. It's not as dark as 300, but, on the first fill water straight from the faucet, the hardness is a lot. So I have a lot of calcium, magnesium. Look at this, carbonate 0. That's not good. Carbonate hardness, or KH, so total hardness, that's like a GH. Carbonate hardness is KH. KH should be a little bit higher. I need to make a water change. And what's happening is that carbonate is absorbing the free floating hydrogen ions from, like pH going down. So when pH goes down, that can exhaust your KH, which it did here fairly quickly. On most of my tanks, I keep my carbonate hardness around 40, and that's good. And the pH is pretty low, 6.4 based on this chart, but it's probably much lower if I did an exact measure of pH. So now I'm not too concerned. I don't have fish in this tank, but based on this, I know that I need a water change, one, to increase my carbonate hardness, or I can use an alkaline buffer because pH can keep crushing. So the carbonate or KH keeps your pH stable. You want that. So yeah, those are the measures that are important. pH, KH, GH, TDS is not as important. But I hope you learned something, and thanks for watching.